and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Rogue's Inquisitive class specialization from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass as well as explain and set up the various features gained. The Rogues of this subclass are named such because they are inquisitive and curious about things, people, and various events in a way that allows them to take those various pieces of information and see the larger picture that others might miss. To the inquisitive, information is gold, and they will be constantly on the lookout for new information and are very observant in general because of that. They will always be constantly evaluating and reevaluating the information they have on hand to weed out the unimportant material and bring forward things that really need their attention. And this would relate to a party because it would allow a particular character to have avenues of access to being able to piece together information that the rest of the characters may not be able to do or be able to gain access to. Thus, whenever a party gets stuck in some way, shape, or form, theoretically, a simple roll from an inquisitive might actually provide the answer that they're looking for because they may already have all the information on hand to put everything together. It's just the players themselves might not have the ability to put it together. And that isn't the fault of the players. That could also be the fault of the dungeon master or even the campaign, as the information itself might have been presented in a way that is just far too obscure for the players themselves to be able to pick up on that, and that's perfectly fine. And while this class does fall under the rogue class, the player can essentially have any alignment that they want to choose for their particular character. That alignment is going to come into play in defining what side of the good versus evil battle your character is going to be on, however. And that is because characters who usually take this particular class are going to primarily be advisors for secret organizations that the rest of the party may be unaware of. And it gives the DM a means to throw in wrenches into the cogs of that particular campaign, for example, or even an instant means of adding new information to the party might otherwise miss. And the reason why I say advisors is because the Inquisitive is meant to be that individual who is essentially the spy master. They take all of the information from their various agents, they cull it, they pull it together, they analyze it, and then they action based off of that information. Now, rogues are also one of those classes that chooses their specialization at level 3, so you are going to have time to consider what subclass you want to select before you actually get there. But let's go ahead and level this particular character up so that we can actually start looking at our various features. So I'm going to select the Inquisitive here, and then I'm going to set up for the first feature. And the first feature your character is going to gain is called Ear for Deceit. And what it does is it gives your character the ability, during an insight check, to automatically assume that any value 7 or lower on that d20 die roll is actually an 8. This means that if your character has a wisdom bonus that gives you a +3 bonus, then at a minimum, your character will roll an 11 on all of their insight checks. But the problem is with the current features within Fantasy Grounds Unity, we can't simply configure things to adjust for that. So these kinds of checks will have to be rolled and then rounded off to the lowest value your character can roll using the above math equation based on whatever stat that you have. In this particular case, the character's wisdom is -2. Well, that would mean that their lowest actual value for their wisdom check or insight check would be a 6. So let's say, for example, that your character needed to make an insight roll. Let's see if I can roll something really low. That would be a 9. There we go. So this 1 here, because of the definition of this particular feature, that 1 gets automatically nullified, if you will, and it becomes a minimum value of an 8. However, because you actually have a -2 in relation to this particular character anyway, on their actual wisdom modifier bonus, that means that this check is actually a 6. It's most likely still a failure unless this was a very, very easy basic insight check and you only needed a 5 to pass it. But it guarantees that you can no longer flat out fail simply due to a low value. But because of the nature of this feature, this isn't something that you have to add to your action sheet, so we don't need to worry too much about that. You just have to remember that you have a minimum value that you can actually roll, and then you add your wisdom modifier to that if you got a number that was actually lower. And my first number here was a 9, so I would have had to have used that because it was higher than the 8. And it's the dice roll itself that you get to modify. It's not the total bonus, in the sense that if you rolled a 7 or lower on the dice, Then you adjust that back up to an 8, and then you add your modifier to it after the fact. That's how it works. Also at Rogue level 3, your character will receive the Eye of Detail feature that allows you to make use of a bonus action for perception and investigation checks rather than having to take a full action to be able to complete those checks. And that's literally what this feature gives you. So there really isn't any need for me to go into any more details around it other than the fact that you don't need to add it to your Actions tab because of that. It's literally just allowing you to use those 2 checks as a bonus action as opposed to a full action. And the last feature your character is going to gain at level 3 is called Insightful Fighting. And it's going to be the most complicated one we're going to set up at this particular point in the video. And it allows you to make use of a bonus action to quickly study a creature and determine a counterattack against it. It will require your character to make an insight check that will be pitted against the target's deception check, if you will. And if your roll is higher, which for this character is going to be bloody hard to do, you'll be able to make use of a sneak attack against that creature for a total of 60 seconds, or 10 turns, regardless of if your character has advantage on it or not. However, if your character has disadvantage against that particular target, this feature cannot be used as it will not work. As long as your character continues to attack that same target, specifically the one that you sat there and studied during your bonus action, then each attack can add the sneak attack damage for the duration already specified, which is up to 10 turns or 10 rounds over the course of a combat encounter. But if your character chooses to use this feature against another target, then everything shifts to the new target and the counter is essentially reset. So you gain back 60 seconds or 10 turns where you can actually make use of this feature. You will be unable to use that sneak attack against the original target, however, because now that capability has shifted to your new quote-unquote studied target. Now here's the thing, if you attempt to actually study a new target while still being engaged and making use of this feature against an original target, as soon as you attempt that check and fail, the ability to make use of sneak attack against the original target also goes away. And other than the fact that this has to be used as a bonus action, there is no usage limitation. So you could literally make use of this feature every single turn if you so chose to do so, in the sense of actually attempting to do a study against that particular target and prepare counters against it. Once you are successful, and only once you are successful, do you gain the ability to actually make use of that sneak attack bonus damage. Now I am going to go ahead and set this up as a feature for our particular character. I'm going to put this under the Inquisitive group. I am then going to sort of mirror what I've done here with the sneak attack, except I'm going to make a few minor adjustments. The first is that I'm going to make a marker. And this is going to be something that will last for 1 minute, and it will go away after that 1 minute period, or you'll have to remove it if you choose to select an entirely different target in order to be able to make use of this. And this marker is going to get used in the next portion of the actual feature. I am then going to add a second feature. And in this particular case, I'm going to actually be staging multiple copies, if you will, of this feature, because I want to set it up once and not have to worry about it again. So I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to call it Insightful Fighting for levels 3 to 4. I'm going to have it so that it checks the target to see if it has this Insightful Fighting tag assigned to it. And if so, when I roll my damage, it will automatically do the 2d6 damage. Now, I'm saying 2d6 because if you look at the rogue's sneak attack table, at level 3 you get 2d6. This is going to replace the need to stack the sneak attack roll on top of anything else. So once this is set up, you will only have to use this Insightful Fighting effect, if you will, in order to actually be able to apply that sneak attack damage. And I'm doing it this way to address a limitation within Fantasy Grounds where you might have multiple damage effects. It's only going to make use of one of those effects at a particular point in time. So you wouldn't want to stack sneak attack in combination with Insightful Fighting in combination with something else. You simply want to be able to have that one effect apply. Now, this is also going to last for 1 minute, and it's going to be on you, and it's not going to expire on the next roll. We shouldn't need to worry about that because we have this if target check. And as long as this tag remains, you'll be able to make use of this. But here's the catch. Sneak attack does continue to increase as your character levels up. So I want to go through and preload all of those quote-unquote increases so that I don't have to worry about doing so later on. So to prepare for that, I'm going to add 8 new empty effects. And I will return once I'm done. So I have gone ahead and preloaded, if you will, all of the effects into this particular feature. And you will see that really all it's dealing with is an incremental increase in our sneak attack damage. But now I don't have to really worry about going through and manipulating or modifying anything around this particular character sheet at a later point in time, because I've already defined what levels these particular features are going to apply at, and that's your character level. So at this particular point in time, our character is level 3. So they will make use of this particular feature, or effect specific to the feature, I should say. When our character becomes level 5, they will start being able to make use of this one. And when they become level 7, they will start being able to make use of this one, and so on and so on. This way, I don't have to come back later on in the video and manually adjust each of these each time I do so. So I'm essentially preloading everything here in one run for the effect. So here's how Insightful Fighting is going to work. Your character is going to state that they're going to use this. So they're going to use, let's say, Insightful Fighting against this Mind Flayer, for example. What you then do is you roll your insight check. And I hope I get a good roll. Not so good. And what's going to happen is that particular check has to be countered against a deception check, which in the case of our Mind Flayer is Charisma. So they're also going to roll, and whoever has the higher number wins. In this particular case, you failed to study any capability or capacity of setting up a counterattack against the Mind Flayer. I'm not sure why that's there. Anyway, with that in mind, let's say that these two numbers were flipped. So let's say you rolled the 13 and the Mind Flayer rolled the 4. In that case, there would be a success, which would then mean that you could apply the token associated with Insightful Fighting against that particular target, and because we are level 3, we would assign this to our own character. Now, whenever we make any form of attack against this particular creature, we will automatically have this additional 2d6 points of damage associated with that creature attached to the damage. So let's make an attack roll. That is going to be a hit, which means I can roll my damage. We should see 3d6 being rolled here. Excellent. This is working. The first dice is the dice for our weapon. These two are the additional 2d6 points of damage. You can always tell that it is from an effect because they will always be purple. If you can't see purple, you will see the effects here, 2d6, that you can actually tell that it worked. That is all summed up, and the amount of damage is calculated and added to the actual creature. That's exactly how that particular thing is going to work. Now, let's say, for example, you decided that the vampire got a little bit close and you need to attack them instead. Well, here's how this is going to work instead. If you attack that vampire... Okay, that's an automatic miss. Let's try that again. That is still a miss, but let's say that you hit. So I'm going to roll the damage against that vampire. It should only roll the 1d6 of dice, and it does. That's because their token isn't on that vampire. Slayer's Prey is apparently, but that's for a ranger. Anyway, so this right here is how this particular thing is going to come into play. Now, if I go through the process and say I want to now use Insightful Fighting against this vampire, you have to re-roll the contest. So let's roll the insight check. And I'm going to have the vampire roll their charisma check. And once again, this is a failure. But here's the thing. The microsecond that you roll that insight check, the token disappears. And in fact, essentially, the whole effect goes away. Until you once again succeed, you will not be able to use the additional bonus points of damage. But because there is no usage limitation here at all, and it is a bonus action, you can literally redo this every single turn as part of that bonus action, and you can continue to do it until it works. Every other turn. And what I mean by that is turn 1, you make a roll, you fail. Turn 2, you roll, you make a fail. Turn 3, you roll, you make a success. Excellent. You can now apply the additional damage. You can't simply go, turn 1, I'm going to roll. Oop, that's a fail. I'm going to roll again. That's a fail. I'm going to roll again. That is not how it works. It's going to be once per turn is how often you can do this. Now, unfortunately, your character will not gain another feature until they reach Rogue level 9, and in this particular case, they will gain the Steady Eye feature, giving your character advantage on any perception or investigation checks when moving at half your normal speed. So if your character can move at 30 feet like this character can, then if you choose to move 15 feet, you will be able to make use of these checks and gain advantage on those rolls. It's a really great way to cautiously advance towards an encounter, but making sure that there aren't any traps or secret passages or hidden devices, things like that along the way. Now, this will require setup on the actual action sheet here. So I'm going to minimize this just so we don't have that big list. And I'm going to drag and drop this into place. I'm simply then going to copy the Inquisitive feature here, or group if you will, and then add a new effect to this feature. I'm going to pop this open, and then simply paste this into place. And what it says is Steady Eye, semicolon, ADV skill, colon, and then perception and investigation in lowercase. This is going to be on self, and it will expire on your next roll. So how the Steady Eye feature is going to work is as follows, and it's really going to be more presentable on a map rather than just a Theater of the Mind demonstration, but we're just going to use Theater of the Mind for now. Let's say that your character has a normal movement speed of 30 feet. You have chosen to go ahead and actually only move 15 feet. You would then apply this particular effect to your character, and it now gives you the ability to start making perception or investigation checks with advantage on those rolls. So let's say you've decided to move 15 feet, and you're going to check for traps. Well, that kind of requires a perception roll. And that's just if you're looking around. If you're actually investigating and going through and very seriously studying each and every step of the way, then you would make an investigation check. But you can see in both cases, they rolled with advantage. At Rogue level 13, your character is going to gain the Unerring Eye feature, and it will allow your character to detect several things. They will be able to sense the presence of shapeshifters who are currently not in their own form, although you won't know what that form actually is. You will also be able to pick up if there is an illusion present, or if there is any magic that is designed to fool your senses anywhere within 30 feet of your character, and that's for all three of those benefits. This does not mean, though, that you dispel the effect. You just know it's there. For the case of illusions, you will learn that what you're looking at is in fact an illusion, but your character will still have to roll against it in order to see past the illusion. Unlike earlier editions of Dungeons & Dragons, where once you realize it's an illusion, it's automatically dispelled. In the case of a shapeshifter, you will simply know that they are not using their original form, but you won't know what that form is. You will have to trick them to being able to return to their form or kill them if they are a combative enemy that you're fighting against in order to be able to have them return to their normal form. And the various kinds of magics that would simply try to deceive your senses, you would simply know that they are there, but you won't know what it is that they're trying to trick you into not seeing. You will still have to roll against them to defeat them. However, there's also a usage limitation which is specific to your character, and I'm kind of happy that there's a usage limitation against this because I now get to showcase something that I've been trying to showcase for a while. This usage limitation is equal to your character's wisdom modifier. Well, this particular character's wisdom modifier is -2. What that means is you get 1 use, which sucks for this character, to be honest. But once that use is complete, you will then have to complete a long rest in order to be able to regain any of those spent uses. So let's go ahead and actually drop this into place. It's going to be part of the Inquisitive group again. And the only thing that we're setting up here is its usage limitation. It's once daily. That's it. If this character had a higher stat value for their wisdom, let's say a 16, so let's put that into there, then they would have 3 uses. But because this character has a 6, they're only going to get the minimum of 1 use. And finally, at Rogue level 17, your character is going to gain the last feature called Eye for Weakness for this particular subclass. And it allows your character to add an additional 3d6 points of damage on top of your sneak attack against any creature that has been insightfully studied and is carrying around that marker. However, Fantasy Grounds Unity does not really chain effects that well, so 2 damage effects might misfire against a given target. But we can make adjustments to our existing Insightful Fighting feature, or we can simply add new effects to this particular feature to be able to take that into account. So let's go ahead and add this to our character sheet. I'm going to copy and paste this group again. And then what I'm going to do is add 2 effects to Eye for Weakness. And it's just going to be 2 effects. We will still apply the actual Insightful Fighting marker. So we'll keep that as it is. But what we will do is copy one of these effects and modify them. And I've already gone ahead and set those up. So I'm just going to copy them into place. And then the last one. There. And what we can see is that we now have 12d6 points of damage and 13d6 points of damage as opposed to the usual 9 and 10 that we would otherwise normally have. Now, this is going to work essentially exactly the same as Insightful Fighting. I've had a hard time saying that word insightful all day today. I don't know why. But anyway, you will trigger a contest between yourself and your target each time that you want to declare that you're going to go ahead and do this. So let's go ahead and try against the vampire again. I'm going to force an insight roll, which it's funny that it's still -2. Oh, right. That's because there's no actual bonus proficiency there. I'm going to then trigger a charisma check. Excellent. So this is actually a good roll. We now get to apply our Inquisitive Fighting feature to the vampire. We can then make our attack roll. Nice, that's a hit. But before I roll the damage, instead of me adding, because I'm level 17, this particular Insightful Fighting effect, I can go ahead and add this effect, which is going to give me 12d6 total points of sneak attack damage. Oh man, this is going to hurt, even though this vampire is going to resist most of it. But that's a lot of dice. And as you can see, we have our lonely one little 5 points of damage that we would have normally done, and a whole pile of bonus damage being done to that vampire. The risk to this vampire just went way up. Now, usually by the time your character has hit level 17, you've definitely had some magical equipment added to your list of armaments, if you will. So technically, this short sword, by this particular point in time, might be a short sword +3 or some form of named short sword that has special effects. So the fact that it resisted in this particular case would not necessarily apply. This is only because I'm using a non-magical weapon. But it does showcase how this particular effect works. And once again, if you choose to contest or change your target to, let's say, the Mind Flayer, let's say that we haven't killed them off yet, then you have to begin the process of re-rolling your insight and forcing their charisma check rolls, which in this case were good. We succeed. So now I can apply the effect to the Mind Flayer. Let's say we're into turn 2 at this particular point in time. So I've now got that into place. Once again, I drop this effect on our character. I don't have to use the Insightful Fighting one. and then I make my attack roll. That is going to hit, and now I do all of the damage, and it is now dying. So you could very easily see how something like this can very quickly turn the tide of a battle. Now, the rogues are a very useful class to play, and the amount of damage that they can normally do is absolutely insane the higher level a particular character gets. However, this subclass now brings that to an even more insane level of damage because it now removes some of the restrictions that normally would have been placed for the sneak attack effect itself, and brings them into play far more frequently than the feature otherwise normally would have been able to have been used. And a rogue of this type really does overbalance the party, and in a way that it favors the rogue, which means an evil character of this particular class who has masqueraded as a useful party member can very quickly decimate a party if they can take advantage of some of these features. And it literally comes down to a series of dice rolls as to whether they gain the ability to do that extra damage or not. And if they're good rolls for the rogue, then the other players are going to be in a bit of a stitch, if you will. However, this does bring us to the end of this video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.